Welcome to another inspiring episode of RYTHM Connect. I'm truly honored to welcome a remarkable guest today, Dr. Agnes Callamard. Agnes is the Secretary General of Amnesty International, a powerful voice in the global fight for human rights. Her work has taken her to the front lines of justice, where she speaks truth to power and champions those whose voices are silenced. She has served in some of the world's most influential roles, from the United Nations Special Rapporteur to Director of Global Freedom of Expression at Columbia University. But beyond the titles, what truly stands out is her unwavering commitment to freedom, equality, and dignity for all. Agnes has been a fearless advocate for freedom of expression, feminism, and anti-racism, challenging systems, inspiring change, and reminding us all of the courage it takes to stand up for what's right. Today, we have the privilege of hearing her story, her journey, her struggles, and the hope that drives her relentless pursuit of justice. Please join me in giving a heartfelt welcome to Dr. Agnes Callamard. Welcome, Agnes.
Thank you so much, and what a lovely introduction. Thank you.
You have been doing so much in the area of human rights, and I heard someone call you that you are not an actor, but you are a fighter. You fight for people who don't have the voice to fight for their rights. Now, I would like to open with this question of your personal journey. Agnes, you have dedicated your career to human rights. In the last 2 days, I was looking at a lot more of what Agnes Callamard has been doing, what she has been achieving, and your voice and, what you've been doing out there. It's amazing. I was for the first time a little nervous to talk to you today, and I was telling this to Ramya. And also at the same time, it's amazing because for someone who's standing for what is truth, which is what I believe in the corporate sector as well as in the foundation, what we do, I believe in doing it right and believing that we must do this for the people who have believed in us. Can you share a bit about what inspired you to pursue this path and how your journey has evolved over the years?
I grew up in a small village in France, where, in fact, I'm speaking you from today. I grew up in a very average family, loving family. But there was something in my family that maybe stood us apart a bit. My grandfather on my mother's side had been a freedom fighter during the Second World War, and in fact during the First World War, because he joined the army when he was barely 17 to fight for his country. And then during the Second World War, he joined what was called at the time La Résistance, which was a very broad movement of people who went into hiding to fight the Nazi occupation. And on the 15th of August, 1944, he was captured by the Nazi, tortured, and then executed. And as a child, every 15th of August, we went to the place where he had been executed with a lot of other people as a way of remembering all those who had fought for freedom and for the independence of their country. So that has very much created a rhythm to the year. Every 15th of August, we spoke about it. And I think it has also made me very aware of the importance of personal dedication and commitment. Because at the end of the day, every strong movement, from decolonization to fighting an aggressor, an oppressor, it's made up of people. It's individuals who just feel that they just cannot stay silent or cannot stay hiding in their home and wait for that to pass. that has been a very important source of inspiration. My mother was a school teacher and who passionately believed in kids, in children, in education, in public education particularly, and who was in her later days who joined a lot of associations, whether it was about French as a second language, sexual violence against children, or just poverty. She was really very dedicated. That's how I grew up, with a very strong sense of values instilled in me. And then the rest is more, what you do with your life, really, how you grab opportunity, turn away from others. So, I chose an academic path which focused heavily on anti-racism, refugees, decolonization. And, it made me eventually, at the end of my studies, allowed me to join, in fact, Amnesty International. That's a long time ago, but I was there more than 20 years ago. And from there on, you just continue a little bit in the same way. But my journey has been first a moment of personal dedication, I will say. It was very and rooted in my family. Then it became an academic study. And then it became a professional journey, from Amnesty to other organizations, to Columbia University, to the UN, where I was a special rapporteur, independent expert, a very important moment in my career, and now back at Amnesty as Secretary General. From anti-racism, decolonization, particularly focusing on Africa, to feminism, always focusing on refugee movement. It has always been a big issue for me. And then more mainstream human rights work, and freedom of expression in the middle. Very important commitment on my part. I discovered, in fact, when I joined an organization working on that topic.
From what I was hearing, that it's the value system that starts from our family, that I think that shapes us who we are today, right? I think it did the same thing to me. When people ask me what's my passion, what's driving, it's what I have been watching my grandfather do and my parents do, feeding people, always feeding people who walked into my home. They'll never go hungry. And that has inspired me today, that when there's something happening, whether it's a natural disaster or even the recent earthquake in Myanmar, we know, Myanmar has been going through a lot as it is. They did not need this natural disaster. And I immediately stepped in and said, I wanted to feed the people. I wanted to give, what is needed. So it's our family and the value system that shapes us. I'm so glad to hear, because that's how your personal journey began. And it continues today after decades, because you have not given up. That has become your life and your mission. That brings me to my next question. As the Secretary General of Amnesty International, what are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities you are facing in today's global human rights landscape?
2025. So it's hard not to make reference to the incredible disruption and chaos that is being unleashed from within the United States to the rest of the world, with really dramatic impact on human rights.
Yes.
So I could just talk to you about Donald Trump and his vision, which is not a vision predicated on the equal dignity of all people.
No.
It's quite the opposite. I think it's very racist at heart, misogynic, sexist, with a strong sense of national superiority.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of those values, if they can be called like that, are creating havoc on a world that was already quite fragile.
Yes.
By a range of things, including, you mentioned Myanmar, so all the conflict around the world that have actually increased over the last 5 years in numbers and in reach and in victims. Russia's aggression of Ukraine has also been a very important moment. And then what Amnesty considered to be Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza has been another. It's more than the disruption, it's accelerating the breakdown of the international system, the breakdown of a common understanding of what brings us together as humans. And international law being one of the glue, really, that should create some guardrails around behaviors and use of power. And all of those things are basically disintegrating in front of our very eyes. So I want to say this is not just about Donald Trump, because all the seeds of the breakdown of the system were already present. He was elected, but he is able to surf on a wave of authoritarian rise, including in the so-called old democracies, in fact, particularly in the so-called old democracies. Poverty has been on the increase for the last decade. It was the fight against poverty had really, I think, taken off, and we were going in the right direction as a civilization, as a global community. But for the last decade, the indicators have started going down again, and particularly driven by rising inequality between state and within state. So that's another factor of great instability for the world and uncertainty. And then the third one is climate. We're living in a world that is witnessing every day the damage that we are doing to the planet, and how the planet is taking its revenge on us through floods, through drought, through a range of so-called natural disasters, killing people. Sadly, the world and the nation, the governments have not had the courage, really, to embark on the kind of changes that is required to at least mitigate the damage. And last year in 2024 was the hottest year on record. From California to Pakistan, including Ethiopia, people have suffered from it. And in the largest meeting, when government come together to determine how they're going to fight back, that's the so-called COP meeting, the agreement made was very minimalist and are not sufficient to protect the world against climate change. So I am also very worried about us not creating the conditions that are necessary for future generations to survive on the planet. So both in the present and in the future, the outlook is very, very seriously dangerous, I will say. And I've been making that message for several months now. It's my message, it's Amnesty message, it's a message of the Secretary General of the UN. It's a message that I share with many people working in my field, or working in climate, or working in humanitarian field. We have never been at such a critical historical moment, and sadly, we are not going in the direction that we should, to fight back, to resist the temptation of easy solution to superbly complex problems. and people are paying the price
I
everywhere.
know. So we can see people are paying the price. We can see the natural disasters. Do you think that governments are open to listening to what's happening and what they need to do and like they should be doing something about it? Do you think there's any of them doing something? Because this is all about also a systemic change that needs to happen. So, do you see that happening, or are we all like making the noise, but the governments are not hearing and not doing anything about it?
We're kind of sleepwalking right into a further disaster. Look, I think that the governments with the greatest responsibility when it comes to climate are the so-called industrialized nations. So it's Europe, it's North America, Australia, China, and possibly, the Gulf countries because they are fossil fuel producing. Yes. Those countries have the greatest responsibility, and one of them is to take care of the other countries because the other countries have not industrialized at the same pace. They have not destroyed the environment at all in the same way, and yet they are paying the price.
Yes.
In that they are really on the front line of what's happening. In the meeting I was talking about, the COP meeting, which is taking place every year, last year that meeting did not allow for the kind of agreement that is required, to create a financial system that will allow the poorest country to continue develop and industrialize because they should, and they should not pay the price of what the others have done. The others should pay for them to be able to do it. That agreement has not really materialized at the level that is required. So that was the first problem. And the second is that there is no agreement, no commitment, except for a few countries, but overall, no commitment to move away from fossil fuel. And of course, this is difficult. All of our economy, culture, civilization almost is predicated on fossil fuel. Whatever it gives us, heat, cars, plastic, we're a plastic economy. So it does require an enormous amount of systemic change. Yes. And what happened in that meeting last year in December, there was no commitment to take those steps. So yes, there may be some governments that are trying to do the right thing. Some are actually forced to do the right thing. I'm thinking about the Pacific Islands or Bangladesh or other countries that are at such a low level vis-a-vis the level of sea that they are almost bound to disappear. So those countries are raising the alarm, are asking others to please be responsible. There are a few other countries that have a higher degree of understanding or commitment, including in a few of them in Europe, a number of them in the so-called global south. But overall, as long as the powerful countries are not taking the measures required, the level of CO2 emission is not going to be sufficiently tackled to allow future generations to live in a world that will be hospitable. And let me add to the failure of last year, the fact that now we have Donald Trump in power, and one of the first measures he has taken, is to delete, destroy, disestablish the regulatory agency that was responsible for ensuring that American companies do not violate domestic laws around pollution, around gas, and so on. The second measure he has taken is to delete any reference to climate change on every federal level website. It just does not exist anymore. And the third measure was to file suit against all the NGOs, including Greenpeace, that are fighting against climate change. So when you have the most powerful country in the world with the greatest influence and one of the greatest CO2 emitters that are taking this kind of measure, you know that the entire world is in really, really bad trouble.
The problem looks, humongous now with the Trump presidency and the decisions that he has made. Because even for us, we are finding from other organizations, because they are cutting down the NGOs. And then they are not giving them the finances. It's like it's a trickle down effect, because it's not just in the US, but it's coming all the way to Asia. And it's global now, and everybody is not being able to help the vulnerable communities. Now, in Rhythm Foundation, we are committed to empowering marginalized communities, because that's our focus through education, healthcare, and sustainable development. Because wherever we go, we try to make our projects sustainable. And in your view, what are the most pressing human rights issues facing marginalized communities today? And how can global organizations like Amnesty International address them effectively? Because we see some, but we would like to hear from your point of view.
I think it's a very, very important issue. So Amnesty is a human rights organization. So our perspective is going to be grounded on international human rights standards.
Yes.
And there are different perspectives. But from the perspective of international human rights, I will say some of the most pressing issues for the marginalized communities are discrimination, entrenched in laws, entrenched in policies, entrenched in the culture. So discrimination is and is twin sister or brother inequality. Both of them together means that the ways out of marginalization become very difficult, because the marginalization is systemic. It's embodied in the way a country works, in the way the economy works, in the way the culture works. And it is one of the greatest impediments to self-growth on the part of individuals and for the community to move out of marginalization. So that's a big set of problems, and Amnesty International tend to work with government. We look at all the legal framework to see whether there are laws in place that are making it impossible for people to move out of marginalization, and whether there are opportunities for new laws that will prompt stronger maybe avenues for coming out of that situation. To give you an example, it may be around education, discrimination in education, discrimination in welfare allocation, and all of these things that we tend to focus on those matters. So much more legal and policy, much more in fact than cultural. Probably other organizations are better equipped than that. But there are other factors in mining areas, in areas where there are many or large indigenous communities, usually in areas with fairly large resources, either because of the wood or because of the mines. Here we are confronting corporate behavior that is extremely toxic, either because they don't take the necessary precautions or because they are going to actually consciously and actively discriminate and try to get access to resources that is not theirs to take. Those communities not only are initially marginalized, but they become more and more marginalized. So we are working with communities in the Amazon, in Brazil, who are confronting a great deal of these this situation, but they were also done that in Kenya, in Uganda, and it is a big issue for indigenous people around the world.
Yes.
Then the third marginalized community is that of refugees and migrants.
Yes.
And the world over, they are probably often the most demonized, and lots of work to be done on both the discriminatory framework, the lack of enforcement of good standards that are completely ignored and neglected, refugees seeking to find safety that are being prevented from reaching safe shore. And you were talking about Myanmar, so you know that the Rohingyas refugees have been extremely badly battered, I will say, not just in Myanmar, but in fact by many other countries, including the Western world, because as you were mentioning, humanitarian aid and development aid is shrinking right now. The US has stopped doing it overnight without any consideration for the people. But, it's so cruel. Every day when I think of it, I'm flabbergasted. A government has the right to withdraw funding after all it's their money, but at least they should give some warning. They should try to look for alternatives. They should, allow people to think through how they're going to manage. The Trump administration did that one day, and that was it. It was, as a colleague of mine said, it was an extinction level incident for many NGOs. And in the first place, NGOs that worked with the most marginalized population. So the ripple effect is that they will suffer. We have documented already how many of them are losing access to essential food in South Sudan, and how many of them in Southern Africa are losing access to medicine for AIDS and for other diseases.
There's no thinking process to this, right? They just woke up one day and said, no more humanitarian aid. I mean, no more funding. But, there's thousands and millions of people who are relying on this, and they could have done it, as you said, systematic, and say, okay, we will do this for the next 1 year, and at least that would have given people some ample time to find alternative ways to do this. Okay, so knowing what is happening, and all this, the funds have been reduced and diminished and doesn't exist anymore. Our work is very much rooted in the belief that change is possible, and also, like, how do we are corporate foundations. So there's many corporate foundations who are trying to do within their capacity what we can, because we have taken indigenous community in Malaysia as one of our pillars, and we are actually working with them, because when we started working with, they are known as the Orang Asli in Malaysia. And we realized when we started going in and working with them that how there's no system, nothing that supports them, no education, they don't even have the basic needs to survive. So what can corporate organizations like us can do in advancing human rights globally? What advice would you give in our role? I'm
sure you're already doing a lot based on what I have read and based on what you are telling me. I think at this point in time, Umayal, I think corporate foundations probably have a very important role in terms of speaking not just to your beneficiaries, but actually speaking to people that are at your level, other corporate actors, to governments who are most probably open to hearing more from you than from me, for instance.
At the policy level. Policy level.
Yeah, policy level, exactly. It is really important for you to communicate in the strongest possible term that the world is in a very bad shape, and we've never needed more enlightened, visionary leadership than we do at the moment, and we do have a crisis of leadership.
Yes.
You just have to look around, and it's very difficult to have anyone articulating a vision for the world that is grounded on our common humanity and understanding that what goes wrong somewhere eventually will have ripple effect everywhere. We must understand how integrated we are as a global community. So I think that foundation like you should not shy away from engaging at that level with government and engaging very directly and powerfully with the kind of position you want the government to take, including internationally, including in those climate change meetings at the UN level, in the Global Assembly. We do need leaders, whether they are economic or political, to stand up for a better world. And so I think it's one important recommendation I will make. The second is that in my view, we need to tackle the systemic nature of many of the violations we are confronting. So you were talking about indigenous people in Malaysia, lack of education and so on. So of course, it is absolutely crucial to find ways of doing things that the state is not doing or that other actors are not doing. But I think corporate foundations should not also shy away from looking at why isn't this happening?
Yes.
Why is the state, why is that local institution that, failing to provide that support? And in addition, therefore, to the humanitarian aid that is essential, to keep looking for the entry point so that there is sustainability behind your own action. I think that to me, and then if you have an entry into the White House, please do what you can.
Right now, I don't know who's there who will listen to what we have to say, because what they don't understand is world has become more than America. So, you're talking about it's an interchanging, because what one country does affects the other. So we cannot close the doors and stay in a cocoon and say that. So I think that was that train has passed the station. So let's not even go there. I always say, let's move forward and do what we need to do. And thank you so much for encouraging us with this, because we are actually putting a blueprint together on the indigenous community in Malaysia, and we are going to take it to our government, and we are going to be their voice, and we are also taking some of the heads of those the Orang Asli community with us, and we want them to be the voice with us to say that there has to be change in the policies, there has to be change in how we are doing things for them, because it is not working. So we are doing that in our own small way in Malaysia. But thank you for also giving that message to us, because that kind of now reiterates to me that what we need to do, as a corporate foundation, because we do have a responsibility as a business to the community, because we are taking. So it's how we give back to the community is very important for us. In closing, I just have a question that I know in a world that can often feel overwhelmed by injustice and inequality, what keeps you hopeful, and what message would you leave with individuals and communities who are trying in their own way to make a difference?
The answer is in your question. What keeps me hopeful is this kind of interaction and meetings. And it's meeting people like you who uses their platform to try to be a positive actor for social justice and for the sake of others. So what motivates me are, students who are young students who are so committed that they don't even see the danger of what they're doing and just want to protect the environment and the forest. What motivates me are the human rights defenders in very difficult environments and countries who speak up in situations where they know they could get killed. Everybody that I meet, I'm a very lucky person because through my job, I meet extraordinary people almost every day. I meet,
Wonderful.
I meet like people like my grandfather when he was 17 or when he was 45. I meet them almost every day. People like him. And it's such an extraordinary privilege to be in the company of individuals who are being driven by an understanding that they need to use, their voice, their platform, their education, their force, whatever, just not for their sake, but for the sake of everyone else. I am also at heart, I think I'm hopeful. I mean, even when the world is so crazy, I just like to think that there will be that we are a majority. That I know for a fact, by the way. Yes, we are being driven by a minority with extraordinary power, whether it is economic or military. But I know from the way the UN Act, I know from the way General Assembly takes decision, that is really the survey of the entire people. I know from, everything that involves the world. I know that we are part of a large, super big group that wants to create a better world for everyone. And that the Donald Trump and, the few others in the world, Putin and so on, are not speaking for us and are not speaking for the majority. So I am hoping that at some point, the strength of our collective endeavor, commitment, and work will pay off. But right now, what we need to do is stand up. I'm telling everybody, everyone has a responsibility right now. Absolutely. You cannot shy away because you won't be able to hide from what is happening and from what is coming. What Donald Trump is doing with the support of, I will say, a handful other leaders in the world will hit everybody. Everyone, whether it's through the tax on export and or on trade, whether it is by stopping all kind of aid, whether it is by doing what he's doing to Gaza and supporting weapons to Israel, all of those things will impact all of us. So everyone has a responsibility to speak up, to speak in their family, in their community, and to act if they can, to join groups, not to work on their own because it is, it's not safe and it is sad. Join collective, join foundations, create your own, join Amnesty, and
don't
work
stop
with
talking.
others.
Don't keep talking, isn't it? Conversations need to continue.
Exactly.
Because I always say it's conversations that becomes the people's power. So I think we need to continue that. Yes. And thank you so much, Agnes, for your time, for your insights and your passion that's driving. I mean, I can just see it. I think we can keep talking. We can, this conversation can go on, but we also know your time is precious. So thank you so much for your time today. To our audience, that's all we have today. Thank you so much, Agnes, for joining us on RYTHM Connect. Your wisdom, passion, and unwavering commitment to justice have been truly inspiring. We are deeply grateful for your time and for sharing your invaluable insights with us. And to everyone listening, this is your reminder. The future of freedom and justice is in our hands. Let's rise to the challenge. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you.